Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of ASKability. My name is Nico Meyering. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a white man with parted blonde hair, uh, spectacles, and I'm wearing a red flannel shirt. I am seated in front of a purple wall. ASKability is a short video series set during October, which is Disability Employment Awareness Month. And this is where I talk with other disabled people about how inclusion, accommodations, and access all show up in their lives. I'm honored today to be joined by my friend Preston. Preston, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I am Preston. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am a white trans man with dark short hair. I am wearing a plaid button-up with a white undershirt. I don't know which button-up I have on. It's either green with other colors or blue with other colors. And I'm seated on my bed in front of a blackout curtain, which I believe is a dark color, possibly black. Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Preston, tell us, what access features or tools do you use in daily life, and how do they help you?
I use a few. Primarily, I use my Apple devices, my phone specifically. I use screen readers, specifically called VoiceOver on my phone. I use adaptive equipment when cooking, Braille measuring cups specifically. I use apps on my phone, not just my screen reader, but apps specifically to read labels and text on objects. This is primarily when I'm playing my Nintendo Switch, is what I do that for, and sometimes for cooking as well. But I have a blind cane that I use, but I haven't been using it very often recently because I haven't been going anywhere. And trying to think what else. That might be it as far as I can think of at the moment.
Valid. This is the first I'm hearing of Braille measuring cups, you said?
Yeah, it is just a plain measuring cup, and instead of having the number written on it or embossed on it, it's actually brailled embossed. So it's tactile braille on the handles of the measuring cup, so I can feel the braille numbers instead of regular numbers printed or embossed on it.
That sounds so useful. I
Yeah.
know that for many members of the disabled community, cooking is an expression of independence and also an expression of self for what is more closely tied to our own culture than food. So I see you in that. That's a really cool adaptive feature that I hadn't thought about initially. Thank you. What access features or tools would make the biggest improvement in your life, and how?
I thought about this when you sent me the questions. I tried kind of thinking in advance.
Sure.
It's a little difficult to say because I would say primarily, and this isn't like a basic independence thing, but because I'm such a big game lover, I would say more accessible video games.
Okay.
Like I said, mentioned, I use my phone to try to independently play games on my own. And at the moment, I'm only able to really play one game, and it's very accessible in terms of having a lot of cues that I sometimes don't even have to use my phone. But then there are other parts of it where I still have to use my phone or even a sighted person to help me. So it's not 100% independent. And it's only really one game at the moment that I'm able to do that because every other game I've tested has not been as accessible as that particular game has been. So I would say that is probably a large part that would help me, because that's probably the biggest part that has affected me negatively in terms of like social like situations or things
Mhm.
related to my being blind is I was such a big game lover when I could still see. So not having that ability anymore, excuse me, not having that ability anymore as much as I did then, and having it, be so limited now has been a big struggle. And I'd also say more on like a different scale of like in my particular location, better transportation. I know I've talked with you offline in different settings and things, and others, that there's not enough or good enough, I guess, transportation options where I live. So we don't have any sort of public transport that's like buses, like basic buses, or even like trains in my town. You have to actually drive to another city to get to a train.
Sure.
So I'd say better transportation is kind of more of a basic thing. I wanted to try to be as succinct as possible, so I think that might be it for now, because I don't want to ramble.
Absolutely. So we have talked previously in other settings about how transit is an access need, but it's interesting that you bring up accessible gaming or adaptive gaming. That could be a huge like market for video game companies, right? You never want to leave money on the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
This brings me to my third question. How are disabled people included or excluded in your community? Are there people or groups that are advocating for better inclusion? Because you did mention living rather in an underserved area, at least for terms of transportation.
Yeah. It's a little difficult to say. I wouldn't say we're excluded, but I wouldn't say we're super included either.
Okay.
We at one point in our town had an organization called WILS, which stands for rather West Central Independent Living Solutions.
Mhm.
And it's a independent living organization that helps disabled individuals, elderly individuals with either like in-home care or like attendant care and that actually at one point, if you got into one of their programs, actually allowed you to have something called an attendant, where they basically worked for you and did particular tasks either around your house or actually would take you to the store to do your grocery shopping and things. And we still have that in other cities around here, but they actually left our particular city. So we don't have like an actual office here anymore. And I still receive transportation with that organization through one of the other offices in another city. Unfortunately, though, I don't really include them as transportation as like what I currently have, because unfortunately I have to pay for it. It's like by miles, I think is how it works. So a particular amount of miles is a particular amount of money. So I had to go just in town to an appointment a while back, was like $11. Sorry, my voice is not cooperating today.
That's all right.
But yeah, so we had that, and other than that, we don't really have anything else. Like I think you or others have talked about different organizations, things and programs you have in your cities, or they have in their cities, and I'm quite jealous. in a good way, I'm quite jealous of how amazing the different programs and things are there in those places, because I wish we had things like that here. And I've honestly considered, I don't know who to talk to, but I've honestly considered trying to reach out to somebody to see if any of those particular programs in those places could be here, or we could start something similar here, because we just don't really have anything like oh my goodness, I apologize. I'm getting ahead of myself and starting to get tongue tied. I'm talking too fast. We don't have anything that's like a basic disability related like committee or organization in our town. We have chapters of different types of organizations, like I mentioned before, offline called the National Federation of the Blind, but we don't have an actual chapter in this city, and it's just for blind individuals. It's not a disability like in general organization, and it's also not like it's not an organization that how to describe it. It's an organization that strives to make the lives of blind people better, but it isn't like a ride service or any sort of like care service or anything like that. It's specifically an organization that tries to like improve legislation for blind individuals or visually impaired as well, visually impaired or blind individuals. But it's not the kind of thing that I feel like would be beneficial to, like, not the only thing I should say, rather, that would be beneficial to have in our particular city. Yeah, so I'd say we're not included, but we're not really excluded either. It's kind of like, sad to say, we're kind of like left on the sidelines, basically, I feel. That's my perception, at least.
Okay, yeah, I can see why you would have that perception. It sounds like you have some advocacy organizations in your area, but they might not be as involved in providing actual services, which can
Yeah.
be, you know, two different organizations and two different efforts. Valid.
Yeah.
There are other CILs, Councils for Independent Living, throughout the nation, and I'm sorry to hear that you fall outside of their service area for whatever reason.
Yeah, it stinks. I don't really honestly know why we lost the one organization, Wills. I don't know if it just because we're such a small. We have like less than 6,000 people in our town.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's just because maybe the pandemic caused problems or something, or I'm not sure what happened. But yeah, it's still, like I said, it's still in other cities around us. It's just not.
Sure.
It's just not in our actual town, unfortunately.
A lot of times when a nonprofit or a social service effort gets funding cut or encounters funding difficulties, they will reduce either services or service areas, which might be what happened here. Uncertain. This brings me to my last planned question. How would you specifically benefit from better disability inclusion?
I would say it would, I would say probably primarily it would just increase it would increase mental health.
It would, yes.
Put it simply.
It's reasonable.
My mental health overall has been pretty good, but then there are times, and I think I mentioned it prior to this conversation, but there are just times where, like, you know, being blind kind of gets to you.
Okay.
Or I would imagine that all disabled individuals have their moments, and it's valid to have those moments. And there are just times where, you know, it gets me down. And so I feel like if disabled people were included better in society, in not just in my town, like with, especially if we had better transportation, that would increase so much, because a lot of my decreased mental health surrounding my being blind is because, one, the not being able to participate in things I used to love, like I said, the video games, and that's actually an aspiration to get into that field of game development or software engineering to try to fix that problem. And also, like, so if that was better, and also if the public transportation was better, or if I even just lived, I'm attempting to work towards getting to a place where I can live somewhere that's a bit larger, has better public transportation or transportation in general, and just things like that. If disabled individuals were more included in like society as a whole, like with things like transportation where I live, and if we were included more in like things like video games, like the blind people like video games too. So I know a lot of like born blind individuals who play audio video games that are just simply black screen with audio. And so yeah, but I apologize. I think I might have like kind of danced around your question, but I would say disability inclusion in my particular community would help primarily with the mental health aspect. I'd say would be a large part, because I really only get down about my disability and primarily my vision impairment / blindness, because it's more blindness. I mainly get down about it because of the limitations I have with transportation and things I used to love that I can no longer participate in fully anymore. So if those barriers were removed, I'd feel a lot less poopy. And sorry for being not super professional with that wording, but I'd feel a lot less down when it comes to my being blind if those barriers were removed. And I hope I answered that question the way you might have wanted me, or might have intended the question to be asked. I hope I answered it properly. So
you did.
Yeah.
I really have no expectations over how people answer in this video series. Really, what I'm trying to do is give folks an arena in which to voice their opinions, concerns, and perspectives. And your perspective is very valid, right? So evidence bears this out, which is that better societal inclusion does lead to better outcomes across the board for all marginalized groups, disabled people, or other groups as well. So I think you answered it very well.
Well, thank you.
Of course. Preston, this brings an end to my planned questions. But before we close, I wanted to give you a chance to talk about anything you've got going on, any achievements you're proud of, any projects you want to shout out. Where can people find you online? This is your chance. This is your soapbox, sir. So the floor is yours.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not super big on social media at the moment. I don't really have many people following me anywhere. And I am very bad to the point where I don't honestly know my handles at the moment. Okay. But I'm very involved in the Diversibility Leadership Collective, which is where we met.
It's true.
And yeah, I do a lot of when I do post on social media, which mostly is my own personal private Facebook. I do a lot of disability related activism, posting and things, and a lot of LGBTQ plus related activism and things, and try to just share the word that disability is not a bad word, and that we just need to make things better and equal for all people. So
disability is not a bad word. What a fantastic phrase to end on. Preston, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Of course. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye.